going to be pretty good. They ended up being phenomenal. Made almost broke a record, got really close. But, for Tunisia too, I think that's the thing, because we haven't been able to see them on the stream, and, their games have gone offline, at least taken care of it for yesterday. This is where it's like, all right, how is this going to match up against Egypt? And I think that's why, for a lot of people, myself included, this is the matchup to watch, Egypt and Tunisia, because, again, Tunisia, I think for them to win this and secure that first slot going forward for AEC, they're going to be the first ones to show us if Egypt was really that good yesterday, or it was just an experience gap, if you will, between who they played. And I think this is the best team to be able to do that, obviously, if you're even just going by the standings. So that's my main thing. And since, again, Tunisia is going to be new for us here, especially on the online viewers watching right now, this is what they want to see. Like, I'm sure some of them that joining us right now, they saw what happened with Egypt yesterday. And I know people were talking about it in the chat, like, whoa, what happened? What's going on? And so now this is like the opportunity. So if there is, I agree with you, if there's a time where we're going to get 3 games, Mirko, this is it. Like, out of the past 4 days, today's day 4, this might be the one where we do get those 3 games. Now, I'll say that if for some reason Egypt really is just that good and they go and, dominate game 1, then there is a chance that it is sweep. But I don't want to say that yet, because I think Tunisia has the tools they need based off, we're going just based off stats on IESF.gg, So we're just going to assume that they have what it takes to take Egypt on. And at the same time, a big part of that will tell us once we get to the draft. Like, how are they drafting? What are they banning out? Because, I know you and Eterna talked about this a little bit too. A major patch just came through, so we got a glimpse of some of the new items also from the previous match. And there's still a lot of room for bringing some of that new stuff to light now.
I think it'll be amazing either way, right? Let's say Egypt actually are that dominant and they actually go and win it 2-0. Then we'll have legit contenders later on in AEC 24, and maybe legit contenders for the main stage if they decide to also dominate AEC 24 in Casablanca and then make it to the main stage as another overwhelming favorite, because we have a lot of those in the MLBB women's scene, right? Mainly, it's got to be Indonesia as well and the Philippines who are still dominating in that aspect, but really, really strong teams that just seem invincible. And I really hope that for Africa, we have that kind of figure as well, a figure that is invincible. People look up to this team and think, man, how are we even going to get close up against this team, right? That would be great. But obviously, some healthy competition will be great as well. If both Tunisia and Egypt can have a very similar level of play to, like, let's say the MLBB men's one, where we actually did see almost as well the game, a series go full 3 games. I remember it being so close. I think it was a match between Senegal and Djibouti, right? That was the match where in the early game it was so fun. In the mid game as well, there were some crazy battles. And in the end, they just had to go back to like the core fundamentals of the game. They have to actually, like, both of them force the best out of each other. And that's hopefully what we get to see in this matchup. Usually when I say I hope for something to happen, it doesn't happen. And it's actually the reverse, the opposite of what I expect and I hope to happen, happens. So just for that, I hope it'll be 2-0, right? Let's play the reverse.
All right, you're going to play the reverse card? Yeah.
Try to reverse it, because at this point we need it. I really saw the potential as well of the previous game to go 3 games, but after the draft, it just seemed different. So this time we got to go at it with a different angle of attack. But I think you brought up a good point. The patch, we actually did get to see a little bit of the new items, the revamped items as well, not just the new items. We got the
You only saw one, right? Yeah.
On no, but we saw the fleeting time as well. The fleeting time that was built on the Fredgen. So interesting, right? The Appraiser's Wrath, not really the biggest ultimate that you would think to utilize the fleeting time. Not a hero that you would think as well to utilize the fleeting time because of all the cooldowns, resets that you have when you get the taunt. But we did see it for the Fredgen. And yeah, if you guys don't know, now that item has adaptive attack. So it follows through whatever damage you already have. So physical or magical, depending on your hero and depending on the build. I'm really interested to see what other heroes can utilize that, right? Because we saw the Ixia just the other day, Naisu, and I think the Ixia would actually get a lot of value from a pick like that, from an item pick like that.
From the Sky Piercer?
from the Sky Piercer and the fleeting
Yeah.
time, dude.
And the fleet time, yeah. Like so today I spent a good portion of the day kind of just reading through like the patch notes, but dude, there's so many, and then
There
at the
is.
same time, like even some of the hero adjustments that were made, I even tuned into some of the streams of the pro players out there, kind of experimenting with things, and I saw some Zask, because we saw that he did get kind of like a buff going on. Allis, by the way, is probably he's like a sleeper hero for me because little weird fun fact, I love dwarves, man, and I'm pretty sure Allis is dwarf. So like in all these games that I've played, for some reason I always opt to pick a dwarf. And so, like, when Allis was released, I forgot what year he came out, but when I first saw Allis, I was like, this is the hero to play. But unfortunately, he just was never that meta, or like he was never really like that good, I guess,
It was
because
better for like a
just
week, I think.
he
That
was
was
meta. Yeah, it was very short, like his strong period, I would say. And so, to see him get like a little bit of a change, a little bit of buff, of course, is nice. But I think the fun part for this patch in general is to see like what new combinations are available in terms of just itemization, because for the longest time when you're watching competitive esports for MLBB, obviously you see a lot of the same build paths and things being taken up, and I think for a while too some of the community was like, yeah, some of these items probably need some changes, like there needs to be something done, especially when you're talking about like Bloodlust Axe, War Axe. I think it was great what they did by taking those two items and kind of just, it's like War Axe now. I believe it's still called War Axe.
It is.
But, some of the changes that needed to happen, I think, and kind of shake up, I would say, itemization or even build paths is really nice. It's a really refreshing time for that to come in, especially with all these big tournaments happening. And I think it leaves a lot of now room for experimentation, creativity, and this is always at least from me, from a player perspective, a very fun time, until things kind of get settled in.
For sure. I think especially now, right? Yeah, you mentioned it, as we get right into the patch, there's going to be a lot of experimentation. I think even here in the tournament, and technically we kind of already saw that even yesterday before the patch. So that's something that's very, very interesting. Are we going to see even more crazy picks now? Add on to the tally of unique hero picks that we've already been talking about, the entire African regional qualifiers, with the roles being swapped, with the flex heroes as well. And now maybe with these new items, maybe we might see a lot more of those ranged heroes come in, because we were talking about it a little bit off cam. Xavier seems like he would do really well with the Sky Piercer, right? You also mentioned that Gord could utilize the Sky Piercer really well if he plays, with that range. So a lot of different ways to actually utilize some of these new items.
I have a question for you.
Wouldn't actually expect instantly with that item. But yeah, what's the question? Shoot away, bro.
You're a gold lane main, right?
Yes, I'm a gold lane main.
So when you looked at these items come through, like, doesn't this make you happy? I mean, like, even a Malefic Gun. Yeah. Like, how would you utilize Malefic Gun? Like, your main used to be 1-1, right? I don't know if your main is still 1-1. How would you utilize Malefic Gun? It's such an interesting fact that it increases the range, the basic range, for 3 seconds.
I think there are a lot of ways to use it, actually. It's a very underrated item, because I see a lot of people now talk about the Malefic Gun and say, that added attack range really isn't too crazy. But I think it's actually quite big, especially for heroes like the Melissa as well, when you need that additional range, right? Let's say you pop into Muddles, you shoot it out. Once that once that ability lands, you get more attack range. And remember, on the Melissa, at this point, because of the changes that were made to her kit, you need to basic attack an entity to get the Muddles to actually basic attack the opponents that you've already landed your ability on, right? So I think it plays into a whole lot of different heroes. Like the 1-1 as well, I think is a great example of that. You land skill 1, usually it's still a bit tough to get the last few weakness points, even with, the 1-1 mobility. But now with the attack range, what that allows you is you already have a crazy amount of mobility, plus the additional attack range, and technically plus the 15% movement speed as well that you get later on. It'll make a lot of these mobile heroes, it'll make a lot of the all-in heroes as well do really well. So it's a very cool dynamic where everybody can utilize it. I think even I was actually in a podcast with a Chinese player. He's Malaysian, but he's in China right now, Long, and he was talking about how Yi Sun-shin could come back in the meta because of this item as well. Get attack range and movement speed, a lot of mobility.
Wait, even on a melee? Like even on a melee here it works?
Technically, that's where we're gonna have to like experiment, right? I don't know if the Yi Sun-shin actually gets it, but he was saying that Yi Sun-shin could come through. I think I'll have to test that out as well. Hopefully, we do get a Yi Sun-shin game as we jump into the drafts of game number 1 for Egypt versus Tunisia. It does seem like right now, Egypt will be on the blue side and Tunisia will be on the red. Roger, banned out, respecting instantly that Roger.
Man, my brain is like firing off right now because like as you mentioned YSS with the Malefic gun, I'm thinking like, yeah, how does that work? If I know he works with range and melee, but like then how does that proc, does that increase his melee attack range too? Because then you're thinking of people like Alucard, like heroes like Alucard even, that have it, such an easy way to get into the zone. I don't know if you'd actually want to pick up, for example, Malefic gun, because
all those too, right?
Yeah, all is too. Like we talk about, I mean, they usually pick up if they want more damage penetration, Malefic Roar. What if they're picking up Malefic Gun and Malefic Roar? There's so much room, I feel like, that will be kind of uncovered here in the days ahead of us.
Now we're going to get to see that Lo Yi ban as well. So expect a lot of the utility prio that we're used to seeing as well, right? The Lo Yi, the chip. I think more pressure will be placed on the red side to actually ban out those big heroes like the chip and the Lo Yi. And if they don't, then they're going to have to succumb to that chip pressure that has been still very, very phenomenal. But I think especially when we get to the MLBB women's side, the meta is a bit more different, right? The meta is a bit more brawly. We've been seeing a lot more Xaviers pop up. We've been seeing a lot more Hanabis as well. Though I think in this particular game, we might not see the Hanabi, but AoE is going to be the main weapon here. And I think, actually, now that I think about it, because of these changes in the items, something like a Melissa could be super prio again, right? You get a lot of that attack range, you get a lot of the mobility as well, and with the Sky Piercer, technically your range is doubled with the muddles. So you're going to deal so much more damage. So I'm still trying to theory craft in my head now as to what heroes will actually be able to find the most value with these new items. But it seems for the bans, there's nothing too crazy just yet. It's a Roger, it's a Fredrin. It's still a very, very normal meta banning phase.
That's what I was already kind of looking at here. This is kind of the difference and between the two teams. What I was talking about with Egypt and Tunisia is like, look how methodical this seems like. They're going through the bans, right? It's something different than what we've had previously, and these are very meta heroes being banned out, and that there's some obviously thought into this, to the bans specifically going out for meta, possibly also some target bans, of course, but this, I would say, Mirko, so far is the most normal maybe bans that we're used to, at least in recent time here. And depending on what these next ones are to round out the first phase, this is interesting because it makes me wonder, what is going to be the priority here? The chip is actually the one that gets taken out too. So far out of these 5 out of 6 bans right now, this is exactly what we're used to seeing.
And I think that's an interesting ban, right? Because we are used to seeing these bans, but the chip on blue side, it definitely means that maybe Egypt are not really that comfortable to play that chip in their own side to even first pick it. That's why they have to ban it out right now. But because technically for Tunisia, maybe they have the chip in their arsenal as well to actually try to utilize later on in the game. But none of the chip, Fredrin and Roger have been banned out with the Lo Yi and the Mathilda. I'm just hoping that we will see the Harith, man, because that's usually what is banned out in these kind of situations, especially when the first pick is still up to go for the Harith, but they go for the Lolita. So there you go, a little bit of a different meta already, right? A different kind of respect towards the Lolita over all the other things. And the Harith is up for grabs. Egypt, do they go for it? Do they first pick the Harith? Is it even still prio after all the item changes? Or are ranged heroes able to just nullify his brawl style because they kite him out of the Zaman force?
That's true. It would be interesting to see if they go something other than the Harith. We don't know if that is going to completely change. Like you said, too, we've seen some really kind of off the wall first picks from the team so far, just from the Africa region in general. But it looks like they're hovering over the Harith. This is going to be a good choice if they do lock it in, and it'll be it. Oh, whoa, the fast swap to the Angela here. They showed it. Maybe they're saying like, hey, you know what, Tunisia, you guys can grab it if you want to.
All right, so the Angela a bit more prio over some of the other picks. Okay, interesting choice, but again,
Esmeralda.
the Esmeralda could come through here up against the Angela, but it feels like maybe a pick that they can save for, the last pick in the first phase. This is why the red side, you get a lot of value there too. Technically, you have other ways to react to this pick, and maybe because the Angela's been picked up, you want to try to take away some of the heroes that actually do well with the Angela, which are dive heroes. The Baxia, Roger has been banned out, so we don't really need to take care or really talk about that, but they're already going to go for the Faramis, so already building up for their own kind of dive composition, their own kind of brawl composition. My question is now, it's gonna be a Carmilla. So starting off strong with just with the core foundations here, and it seems like, I just said it, when you have an Angela, you're going to see a whole lot of dive in your composition. Heroes like the Baxia, but also, the Yu Zhong. I can't believe I completely forgot about the Yu Zhong, especially considering the last 3 days, Yu Zhong is still sitting at 100% win rate. Yes, nice. So 100% win rate on the Yu Zhong. With the changes on the effects as well, on his animations, it definitely will look much flashier.
Oh man, if this Harith is going to be locked in too, I'm almost just expecting the response to be an Esmeralda. And maybe that's kind of what they're planning here, but okay, Valentina. It's been a minute, man, since we've seen Valentina picked up. I feel like she's been slept on a little bit, but finally gets locked in here. And so this is actually interesting because with a Valentina being locked in, and again, we haven't seen many teams pick her up, but this time around, you have actually already in these 2 picks across from you from Tunisia, pretty good ultimates to choose from. You could take the Curse of Blood if you want to. You're most likely a lot of times also going to have the Nether Realm priority. So now for the rest of the lineup, what does Tunisia do here? How do they round this first phase out? Because across from them, they've already got to deal with just the strength of an Angela, especially paired up with Yu Zhong, like we said, 100% win rate so far. And it looks like the answer is going to be the CC. So they get their XP lane locked in. And, that matchup should be okay. A lot of the times we've seen the Yu Zhong matchups not go very well, but it's also just because a lot of the times, at least for the African region, they snowball so hard on the Yu Zhong. And usually by then, I would say it's either the Yu Zhong or the Dairoth. We saw glimpses of that from its Dark Prime. But so I think this is actually a good response. Pick up the CC. You have at least, Vengeance to play around with. You can be able to sustain yourself pretty well. And I'm wondering, too, how this kind of change the new items. Like, the new items might change some of the build paths or options here for both XP laners.
Yeah, especially considering the War Axe is, has been changed. Maybe now the Yu Zongs and the CC, well, the CC already usually goes for the War Axe, but maybe now Yu Zong players are more inclined to go for that War Axe over, let's say, the Hunter Strike or even just that Fury Hammer that we were talking about before, right? As the one sole physical damage item before you go for the full tank build that you're used to going for. But Harith, good adjustment there. They saw that, Egypt were hovering over that pick a bit too many times in the first phase. To let it go in the second phase would absolutely be a crime. So we'll take it out of the way. Good Minotaur ban as well to anticipate, they're going to be diving. Their composition is already built against to actually look for that dive. If they do give Tunisia a chance to counter that dive with a reactive roamer, with a re-engage tool like a Minotaur, it definitely will stop some of those plans from happening. And I think it's a good ban because usually, a lot of people would let the Minotaur go when you already have a Valentina in your lineup. But if you take a look at the enemy team, there's already a lot of big ultimates that you can take. You have the Curse of Blood and you have the Nether Realm. If you add a Minotaur into that composition, I think it would overload the Valentina with a lot of big ultimates, and it'll actually confuse the Valentina as to what she's going to take. So, great adjustment. There's going to be an Exborg ban though, so just basically giving Carmilla a bit more space to enable it later on, as the Exborg will be able to actually melt her down and poke her down in a lot of these team fights. And I think for sustain, if you look at the composition for Tunisia, they've got the sustain down. It's so far a battle of sustain, but I think the sustain overall for the side of Tunisia is a bit more reliable. Meanwhile, for the side of Egypt, it's more one-dimensional. You have that hard guard, but it's only on one dude.
Yeah.
if you can layer the sustain on your team, on Tunisia, with so many of the tanky picks that you already have, they added Barats onto the very tanky lineup already, and it still is a very good flex pick, I want to say, but I'm not too sure because the CC should be an auto XP. Like that should be instantly an XP pick, unless they want to try to play it in gold lane. So yeah, technically still a very flexible composition for Tunisia. Not really aware of if they have the tendency to actually role swap and to actually utilize the marksman or the fighter in the gold lane. But if they do, then yeah, so far they have 3 flex picks that can be utilized very, very well. Clint, though, going to try to kite away up against this, and the Baksha that I mentioned in the first phase that does really well with the Angela will be picked up in the second phase to round out their drafts.
Okay, so interesting. This is, again, a very, so far, like, meta concept lineup from both sides, I would say. So really, you know, you're gonna have to see how the execution comes down to it, but it was good that they locked in the Baksha, because you already made the point here, Mirko, that, you know, that sustainability, or at least that healing, the healing capabilities that the lineup from Tunisia has is pretty reliable. So how do you deal with that? You know, you lock in the Baksha, he's got his passive, but also something that I was excited about is, again, your glowing wand was infused with the whole necklace of Durant.
Yeah.
Right? So it has that now. And it's actually great because you could build that instead of spending so much time building, you know, 2 items, the necklace of Durant and usually glowing wand. I love that change. And so for this last pick too, that was the carry, right? The carry locked in last pick to round up the lineup here for Tunisia. So honestly, both lineups, I see so many plus sides for both of them.
Agreed, man. I see a lot of potential from both these compositions, and you can even see the Purifies come in. We've been talking about how Purifies have been the bane of some of these teams, right? Like sometimes they actually just lose because they don't pick up Purifies up against a Tigreal, up against a composition with so much CC. But I'm glad to see that Tunisia, they realize, hey, you know, there's a Yu Zhang on the enemy team. There's a Baksha as well. There's a Valentina that can steal our Curse of Blood. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to actually pick up a Purify. 3 at that too. And 3 on the most important members. The Carmilla, that will be the main source of re-engage, or the main source of pick early on. That's a Fairness as well that gets the Purify on his hands when he goes for the Netherrealm. If he does get caught in the early phase of the game, or in, you know, early on in the initiations, he will be able to just pop in that Purify and pop the Netherrealm, give it over to the rest of the team. And number 1, most important, the damage dealer has the Purify as well. The carry will be getting her hands on the Purify. So good adjustment by both teams. We'll see in game number 1 if Tunisia can get it done, or if Egypt secures game number 1. Here we go.
You know, I almost expected, I know names locked in the Clint, but because of the Barretts was on the other side, I almost expected them to pick up the carry, you know, to at least have that to kind of shred through the Barretts here. But they ended up not doing that. And also at the same time, I'm still waiting to see the new emblems be locked in, but that's not going to happen, at least for this game right here. It is the focusing mark, though, that will help, actually, Nucci, especially on the Angela. Whoa. Look at this 1v1 action already. Hold on, Velvet? Okay, gonna rely on the best he can. Vengeance, though, already gonna be used. That level advantage was the level 2 for Shadow, but no one goes down, so still pretty good start here for both teams right now.
Really well played, though. You know, it looked like it was a mistake going in, all in there, in a point where you're already so far behind in terms of resources, but she used the Petrify so well, and it baited out the Vengeance. So technically, it's a very, very good trade, and knowing that Egypt have the control in the mid lane, better control, they can actually start rotating into the bottom lane, forcing Shadow out of the wave that she can take, and maybe Velvet might be able to actually deny some of these minions away from the CC. So little small victories already, very, very impressive stuff. And technically for Egypt, this is what we come to expect, right? They were able to beat a team in 6 minutes. It definitely takes some crazy level of macro on top of the crazy micro that they already have as well to pull something like that off. But so far, Tunisia have been able to respond very, very well. They lose out in the mid control, but they go straight into their own jungle to give Dusk a good time in that jungle to clear out these waves. And look at the option that she actually went for, right? Brave Smite. So she knows that the Baksha can actually match her when it comes to clear speed, so she would much rather get the Brave Smite and try to go for sustain. But early on, level 4 for every single one on Team Egypt. Nucci, a bit late to it, but she'll be level 4 after clearing that wave just in a bit.
Yeah, she's gonna hopefully have that. No, she's lacking a little bit of XP, but they're gonna use the Dragon Form already. Turtle's gonna go ahead and reset. Dragon Form enough to push them back a little bit further. Petrify finally gonna be used into the Furious Dive. They get the Vengeance out too, and still driving them back further. Tunisia goes back to the turret. Nether Realm from Yule used up. Do they actually just go for the turtle now? There was a lot of ultimates and spells being used up, but it looks like they want to dance off once again. Fourth of the health here on this turtle. No one's going to commit just yet. Daytona's welcome, going to eat him up. Throw her into the wall. Dusk will get the turtle, though. Nether Realm going to be used once again. What a clean fight and exchange between both the teams, but Tunisia comes out on top of the objective.
Great initial initiation from Egypt. They wanted to force that pace on towards Tunisia, but I think the Tunisian patience was definitely the highlight for me there. The fact that they had all their abilities still up, by the way. Dusk still had the Detonus Welcome, the Curse of Blood was still there, ready for them to utilize, and even the Nether Realm. But all they decided to sacrifice was the Vengeance from Shadow. And because of that, we were already talking about it in the draft, how Tunisia have so many more layers to play around when it comes down to these team fights. Because for Egypt, it's a bit more one-dimensional. They use one cycle of that of the skill rotation, and it's going to be on cooldown. They're going to have to respect Tunisia a little bit more. Meanwhile, for Tunisia, it's kind of the same thing, but they have a lot more to layer. They have the Curse of Blood, Nether Realm, the Detonus Welcome, and especially around those neutral objectives, they should never really be forced to use that before the turtle gets contested. And that's what they did. Now, another engage.
Ooh. Another Heart Guard going to be used. Going again it very quietly here. Raven takes quite a bit of damage, though, herself. And now still careful on the approach. It looks, again, very similar to before, where it's a push and pull. Mary will go up. She's going to take a couple shots, but they bring Electa back. Now they might want to fight this out. Nether Realm going to be used. They have to fight it out. Daytona's welcome into the wall. They find the stun. Now looking for the kill. She gets dragged back a little bit further, but no one will go down again as Yul just sweeps on out of there. Mid lane, though, Vengeance and Shadow. Neither team has anyone fall down just yet. 4 minutes and 40 seconds into the game. No first blood, Mirko.
Amazing back and forth for both Tunisia and Egypt, both understanding. I think Egypt, we were talking about how Tunisia have those layers to play with, and Egypt, they adjusted instantly. They were caught off guard by the amount of layers that Tunisia can add into these skirmishes in that first turtle, that Egypt instantly adjusted to it. They knew, all right, we made a mistake. We tried to force the issue. We tried to force the pace. At that point, we should just try to match the layering. Use the hard guard when Tunisia engage. Use the Nether Realm as well, stolen by the IMU after the Detonus Welcome had been used up. So now it becomes equal game coming into turtle number 2. But the Black Dragon Form with the hard guard will be used up.
Gets the combination. She's going to push Dusk back away from the turtle. It's going to reset for now. Petrify not available just yet, but they'll force him back to the tier 2 turret. Mary's still going to be fine, and she answers back as well. But that is going to be an objective secured for Egypt here. Great play, great combination, and yet no first blood for either team. But they're doing such a good job of the objectives.
Not just that, they're doing a good job at reacting to the plays, the mirror plays that Tunisia are trying to make happen. Shadow, he knows that up top, it seems like for the rest of Tunisia, they aren't really going to be able to withstand the Black Dragon Form hard guard in the early game. So she rotates into the bottom lane instantly to try to get a trade off of that turtle. But unfortunately, because Names was just so much faster into the rotation, she went over to the bottom lane. Petrify! Ooh.
Velvet wanted to fight Raven, even with Dusk there. But it looks like Yuki's going to make her way up as well. And now there's going to be an exchange. Cross map a little bit, but not enough minions to push that turret in just yet. And so interesting that it is Raven versus Velvet. And they're just going to battle it out up there. So pretty much just swapping, right? Gold laners going against the XP laners. And for that, even looks Velvet's doing fine. Turret finally goes down to the bottom side, and Nucci picks up a big item pickup. Here's the Dragon Form, has the Heart Guard. They're going to go for Raven. She's in trouble, gets taken down. First blood finally, just under the 7-minute mark. And that's going to be an objective up on the top side as well as the tier 1 gets taken down.
Right into the revamped item, man. He picks up the War Axe. So we were already talking about how maybe the War Axe could be the replacement to the Hunter Strike that we were used to seeing for the Yuzong in the early game for that soul damage dealing item. And yeah, so far that looks like it's going to be the case for the Yuzong for Velvet. She is snowballing currently, and she only has 1 kill, but a turret to her name, and name slowly but surely becoming a threat in this game. She already has an endless battle, but it seems Tunisia want to defend this.
Yeah, they're going to have to. Turret goes down. Finally, Electa was holding the line there, but they want to find it out. Netherrealm going to be used. It gets taken care of really quickly. No one to pulled in just yet. And it looks like they're going to back off from there. So again, a lot of ultimates, a lot of spells being used here from Tunisia. And no one able to get the kill that they were looking for. So now the turtle's up once again. And Egypt has a little bit of an upper hand here. They got to wait a little bit longer. Electa needs that retribution available. But it looks like it might be Tunisia just being like, you know what? Let's give this one up and get what we can across the map.
And I guess now we definitely see why the Clint was prioritized over the carry, right? Why did they go for the Clint over the carry?
Top.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a gank up top. Velvet, though, he's really clean with it, knows that there was something happening, and this is the read that we're talking about earlier. Bottom lane against Shadow.
Shadow? Okay, Shadow's gonna be fine, but they're losing something here. Even 1 versus 4 does have the heart guard, though. So they're at least gonna get the turret here. Tunisia's able to get that. Do they still want to fight? Looks like they do. Jumps in Velvet. She wants blood. They get the Netherrealm out. Still gonna have to find it out. 2 versus 4, and they buy enough time. Yul making her way up. They might look for a cutoff, but Tunisia knows it. They have the information. And slowly but surely, Egypt continues to build the lead they have. Mary jumps into the front. Dusk there as well. They're trying to keep this together in the tier 2 lane. Not sure if they want to fight this out, though. Looks like Egypt has control so far. Part of this game, Mary could be in trouble here. She gets a couple shots. Able to escape, but Yuki might not be able to one hit as Yul gets it. And now the tier 2 looks like it's going to go down as well. Egypt has put the pedal to the metal at this point in the game.
Wow. 2 kills in the last 9 minutes, but the macro control has been phenomenal for Team Egypt. Utilizing the hard guard to help Velvet up top in the solo lane, reacting to the maneuvers that Tunisia are making to mirror some of the plays that Egypt are proactively making happen around the map as well. That was just beautifully done by Egypt. Again, I want to go back to that play, right? Because 4 members of Egypt were in the bottom lane. They already pressured Shadow, and we were talking about how or why the Clint was more prio than the carry. It's a winning lane, number 1. So having a better mid trio on top of having a winning lane in the gold lane just makes it so much easier to get the game under your control in the early phase of the game. And that's what we're getting to see right now for the Clint. Crazy range and mid-game damage. That's a Heptases into the Endless Battle and the Milfic Roar. How they were able to utilize that hard guard was just beautiful, right? And the read that they had as well. They zoned Shadow away. They dove in very aggressively, knowing, okay, no one's coming to help Shadow. So they're 100% going to be on the other side of the map looking for a cross-map play. And then they just send the information to Velvet. She reads it well, and then disengage. And then she disengages again. Hold up. There's another fight.
Still want to find it out here for this Lord Dance. They get the Netherrealm out in response from both teams. All clumped up together. Heart Guard going to be used as well into the backside. She jumps. Yuki's the first one to fall in the exchange, but it's a double for names. That might be all they need here. They're going to force Tunisia back, and now they can start up the Lord. Egypt comes out winning once again.
4-0. Yet the gold lead speaks way more than just the kills, right? Because of the objectives that they've been able to secure, this gold lead isn't even reversible, technically, because Tunisia, even if they get a wipeout onto Egypt, there are no bounties to be taken away. Nobody is on a killing spree. Names has 2 kills. That's the disciplined game that they've been playing, and now it gets even scarier for Tunisia because, yes, they do have the late game presence. They can actually wait for the CC, for the carry to get to the later stage of the game, and maybe, possibly, they'll be able to match the damage output coming in from Egypt. But there is no bounty to be taken, so they have to get the gold lead back in a very slow way, in a very traditional way, which is what? Farm up, clear these waves. And if I'm going to be honest with you, they do not have good wave clear. This Faramis, this carry, the carry can deal damage to the Lord, but to the other mini waves, the AoE is definitely lacking from Tunisia.
Well, see if they can defend their base here. Hard guard going to be used on top of Electa. She's going to force them back even further. Velvet also with the Black Dragon. They get the base turret. First one on the bottom side. Now they might want to fight it out. Yuki goes down again. They down one member. Shadow to follow. Lord's still going to be up, but they're going to go ahead and focus on the crystal. It's a double for names. Looking for more, but they'll end the game with that as Egypt takes game 1.
They double their game time. It's not a 6-minute game, but we expected a close matchup night. So we expected both these teams to be able to go back and forth. And to a certain point, we did. But the additional creativity, the different level of macro, I would say, for Egypt, especially in the mid game, was shown. My goodness, the way that they were able to make those proactive maneuvers, but also stay disciplined at the same time was just really, really impressive, right? Because again, in that mid game, they showed that they can go for these neutral objectives. They can adjust to the layering that Tunisia had in favor of them to bait out these resources and to just be more decisive with their engages, utilizing only the Black Dragon form, the Hard Guard to zone them away, simultaneously sending their gold lane into the other side of the map to cover out for any of the turn points that Tunisia could have been looking for, right? Like the tier 1 turret. And I think it's also the difference of the Yuzong and the CC. The CC does great in a 1v1 lane against another melee hero, but when you get placed in a lane up against a Clint, when you cannot actually get in range to outtrade your opponent, the CC doesn't find as much value. And that's where we get to see both those side lanes get exposed. For the carry, against the Yuzong, getting dove on, very short range, and with the Purify, very, very easy to bait with a Hard Guard, with an Angela and a Yuzong. And in the bottom lane, CC, very, very easy to punish by a Clint, and also by technically an Angela as well, because she can be on both sides of the map, depending on how she uses the Hard Guard, how she uses the rest of the abilities. But wow, it's just really, really impressive stuff. And the discipline, I think, is the highlight for me. Definitely the spotlight, that takes the spotlight, because for names, if I was put in that position as a goal laner, if I was so far ahead already, I'd probably be flickering forward way more often, right? Trying to go for these kills. But Names held herself together really, really well, knew that she didn't need to go for these kills. And maybe going for the kills would have ended up with Tunisia getting another chance to actually turn the game around, because we were talking about how the bounty was going to be big if they did get a bounty, if they did have a bounty. Because for Tunisia, that was a team fighting composition. It wasn't a sieging comp. It wasn't even a wave clear comp, because their wave clear was definitely not it. They had a little bit too many single target damage, and it showed in the last skirmish. It showed in the last siege.
You know what I would have liked to see there? I was just kind of thinking about this, and I feel like this is going to constantly happen to me for days and weeks ahead. I know for Names, she had the Malefic Roar, but I was wondering, I wonder now how the relationship between the grenade bombardment and a Malefic
gun.
What is it? Gun. A Malefic gun would work, right? Because he already technically, when he uses the grenade bombardment, Clint gets the extra range that kind of shoots through, right? So I was hoping we'd get a little bit longer in that game and maybe see if she built the Malefic gun with the Malefic Roar on Clint. It's something I want to go and see if it works and test it out. But I will say this, Mirko, I think again for the majority of that game, it was relatively a very macro-based game. This was one of the most, I feel like, representations of what we see currently in the meta, between these two female teams. Tunisia actually did a decent job, especially keeping Egypt contained. Again, first blood was just about the 7-minute mark. Let's take a flashback to the days we've been casting Africa, man. When have we gone 7 minutes without a first blood? You know what I mean? This is a region that is just, they love their fights early on, and that's where they snowball from.
Exactly. I mean, you can talk about the first blood, right? But I'm more impressed by the end of the game, because in 12 minutes, usually we have double the amount of kills. Usually we have 24 kills in 12 minutes. We had 7 kills that entire game. It was a one-sided affair, but they did it in such a classy way. They did it in such a good way of just macro and objective.
Very macro.
If you cover the name of the teams, right, you would probably think this is a Filipino team, the way that they were playing with the objectives, the way that they were actually just utilizing the cross-map plays as well and reacting to some of the maneuvers from Tunisia. Really, really impressive stuff. And even from the emblems, I got to give them some praise here for Electa, especially on the Baxia. So also kind of the same idea. She didn't want to go for the concussive blast. The concussive blast does allow you to clear the jungle a lot faster, to path in the jungle a lot
Hmm.
faster as well because of that additional clear speed. But she knows that I think in this game, Tunisia are going to be looking for team fights. So going for a more clear speed to rotate faster won't be the key to the game, but it will actually be the additional sustain and the additional mana regen that you get from the Impure Rage to stay in your jungle a lot more so that you can participate in these fights a lot more. And yeah, ultimately that was indeed what got them the win. The Baksha was all over the place on top of the
Yeah.
hard guard. Like you already have a global presence. Technically, the Baksha is another way to have global presence. Shield unity everywhere. You open up the map everywhere, and you're really hard to catch. Even if you open up against 3 members, pop in that Puissance, and then the hard guard comes over you, and you get out, bro. If the Yuzong can survive, the Baksha can too. Okay, the
Yeah.
Yuzong was going for some damage too. It wasn't a full tank
100%,
build.
by the way.
100% win rate still. Yes, that's a fun fact for you guys. Yuzong in the African regional qualifiers, not just for MLBB women, but for MLBB men as well. The tally continues. I don't know how many times it's been picked up, but it's been picked up a whole lot. And now it still stands at 100% win rate. And now we get to see what the War Axe does to someone like the Yuzong, who is ahead with a hard guard as well. So you stay in these team fights for quite a long time with all the sustain that you have. And man, that damage definitely adds up, bro. He was melting everyone. 1v4, you mentioned it in your play-by-play. She
Yeah.
took the 1v4 up top. That was not a normal 1v4. You would never take that if maybe, obviously if you didn't have the hard guard, but maybe if you didn't
Yeah.
have the War Axe, you wouldn't take that either.
And like think about the amount of sustain just in the Yuzhong. Again,
Exactly.
rolling with Quantum Charge, the new War Axe that basically has Blood Axe into it now. You have the essences, the Shaw essences, part of the kit that work really well with you. And then you have Nucci on the Angela.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, excuse me, it's just, it's so much sustainability like in one hero alone. And I think that was really kind of like tough to deal with for Tunisia because, yeah, she went 1 versus 4. She was able to keep things together by herself sometimes, even without the hard guard. And I think that dynamic, again, was what really kind of helped them push and pull with dealing with a Carmilla Faramis combination. Because that's part of the whole game plan here for Egypt, really, with the lineup that they were going up against, was to get rid of the Netherrealm and the Curse of Blood as much as possible. Because obviously, when the Curse of Blood is going to be used, you don't want to be bunched up and fighting into that. And a lot of the times, she took the Netherrealm. So it was like a Netherrealm versus Netherrealm battle. But the additional part to Tunisia's lineup would be if they're able to get that Curse of Blood off and then, kind of utilize that. Unfortunately, for Tunisia, Egypt just counterplayed it really, really well. And, again, part of the dynamic there was the fact that, like you mentioned, you can just use the Angela even on the Baksha. So Electa was already everywhere. And then, you have this extra confidence because you can always count on the heart guard, and that's something that you see teams play around with constantly whenever the Angela is picked up. And again, focusing mark, just a great emblem to kind of even increase the damage that you already have with the lineup that Egypt drafted here. Yu Zhang, like we said, is there's a reason why this hero is 100% win rate, and I think now with the patch, he gets like even stronger. I'm waiting to see like what is going to be a good counter to Yu Zhang still in the lane, especially with some of the changes here.
And then the Netherrealm too, right? That was stolen, and technically the
Yeah.
Curse of Blood that could be stolen as well. That's why the Valentina was picked up over the Harith, because you do have a lot of team fighting power. You do have a lot of that early game prowess to utilize to maybe dictate the matchup in the gold lane as well. Kind of the same thing as the Clint, but in a magical damage version with more mobility and more sustain to build around it. But going for the Valentina was just the right option there to go for, especially after seeing the Faramis, after seeing the Carmilla in the first phase. You just have so many ultimates to go for, and then the ban too, onto the Minotaur, knowing that, okay, there's already 2 big ultimates for the Valentina to choose. If they get the Minotaur, I think it'll be a bit too many ultimates for her to choose. So ban that out, let it just be 2, And the two that she decided to go for every single fight was amazing. She never really got bothered as well, never really got baited by the Barat's ult, because a lot of Valentinas would go for the Barat's ult. Would just go for the Death Just Welcome, try to look for a pick. But she knows
Yeah.
the value, especially with both the compositions being a lot more oriented towards team fight. The Curse of Blood and the Netherrealm definitely served the better, served as the better ability to take in that game for both of these compositions. And now as we get into the second game, I feel like Tunisia, especially after, seeing how diverse Egypt's playstyle could be in game number one, they need to start to pile on that diversity as well in their composition, because I definitely understood what their composition was supposed to do. But if you fail on that, plan B was non-existent almost, right? You go for these
Yeah.
team fights. You want to go and win the lanes. But if you don't win the lanes, if you don't win the team fights, if you don't secure the neutral objectives, you get placed in a position where you cannot clear. Your kite back is not the best as well. You don't have a whole lot of like re-engage, because the layering could be good, but technically it could be copied as well by the Valentina.
It's for Tunisia, I'm trying to think, like lineup wise, yeah, it was good overall. I think I said that before we even jumped into the game. I was like, there's a lot of pros here for both lineups. It's just, I think, yeah, that was the thing. Like, they didn't have this plan B to deal with what Egypt kind of threw at them. And again, I think it's a good point to say, like, if you had put your hand over the team names or even the player names here, it looked like a very familiar kind of macro style of play between the two. Like, you would think you're watching Philippines and Indonesia almost, kind of like battle things out, or let's just say Philippines versus Philippines. And so I think if you're Tunisia and you want to be taking this to game 3 and be our first game 3, by the way, in the entire African online qualifiers, obviously we always say this, it starts in the draft here. And I think if we see similar bans, we saw very meta-based bans, but let's just say they alter this in the way that they can lock in, for example, the Louis Yi or Chip. Again, we don't know if they're going to be 100% confident in playing with the kind of intricacies that come up with picking a Chip, because timing is everything with that hero, but it is so strong that we'll see if they actually want to opt for possibly taking the Louis Yi. I think Louis Yi still is a very valuable pick, or maybe even the Yu Zhong out of the hands, of Velvet here. So first off, though, they're going to go ahead and just ban out the Angela, and so far also we see that Fredrin answer here.
Still the Fredrin, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, especially considering you won with that kind of strategy. But the Angela definitely will be banned out. That's something that they need to fix for Tunisia. The Angela was an absolute menace for everyone, because it allows you to just go for so many different picks. And again, if they didn't go for the Harriet ban, let's say they went for the Bakshep ban but left the Angela open in that first game, it would have still been bad, because then the Harriet would get it. So Angela, if you don't want to pick it, you've got to ban it away. And right now they're definitely trying to force out the Luo Yi and the Chip to be up for grabs for them, right? For themselves, right? Because with the Roger and the Angela, now the two picks that, okay, there you go, that have been banned in the first game are technically left open, but they already got rid of the Chip. And now for Egypt, they're asking the question, do you want to ban the Luo Yi? Because if you don't, we're going to be banning out the Luo Yi. I think for Tunisia, though, it doesn't seem like Harith is something that they're considering anyways, because the Harith was up for grabs for them after the Angela pickup from Team Egypt, and they didn't go for it. So at this point, what? Do they want to try to go and ban the Valentina and first pick the Faramis? If they want to go for the Faramis, if that's their style of play, if the team fight is very, very powerful for them, then I could definitely see that happening, right? Ban out the Valentina. It's something that we don't see a lot in the first phase anymore, but back in the day, Faramis Valentina, that combination is always banned down in the first phase, but they decided to go for the Mathilda. So taking away a bit more utility from Egypt and forcing the Luo Yi out of Egypt, because if it's not banned out, it'll be picked up for sure. For sure.
That's what I'm hoping for, right? And so far, Mirko, what we've seen from these two teams is there is this very methodical pace to the draft, even to the picks we saw in the previous one. So we'll see if this is going to be taken out. The Louis was taken out, because that's where I would just kind of assume that's going to be priority here, priority for either of the teams, depending on what they want to go with. But as we wait for that last ban and we get back into there, that's the thing, man, is there's this whole method to the draft, and you'll be able to find out exactly based off the first kind of picks what the teams want to do with them. And if we're going to go ahead and think of, oh, is it going to be the Loyi that gets locked in? Then that already, as we have said throughout this whole days, diversion is huge. Like the value of a diversion is going to be very good for any kind of lineup that you want to approach with. And I think that's something too for Tunisia here, is being able to lock in, because mid lane, I feel like that mid lane rotation, you mentioned this in the previous game, where that 3-man rotation from Egypt earlier on really set the pace, really set things going once they got past that, that first blood mark. Before that, they were making really good plays around the map. But Tunisia, this time around, I'd love to see them be the ones to set the pace, get things going. And there it is. So we get back into the game, and it looks like in the draft, it is the Loyi that gets prioritized here.
Interesting, the fact that they left it open, but they definitely have a plan with this, right? Oh, the Lolita that was banned by Tunisia, we get to see it in the first phase. So it definitely is just a prio ban. I mean, a respect ban coming in from Tunisia in that first game. Nucci on the Lolita, a signature pick, that means, right? And then the Yuzong. Just with the Yuzong alone, it already bumps up the win rate, man. 100% win rate still. I just got to remind everybody that's watching right now, if you see the Yuzong, the odds are in his favor.
In their
right?
favor. Did they change his portrait, by the way? It looks more like colorful.
Yeah, so the purple now changed to red, and like it's red and black now for Yuzong, and even the abilities in game. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see him on the classic skin. I really hope we get to see the classic skin, actually, because the classic skin feels like a collector skin at this point. But it says Esmeralda will be picked up with a Minotaur, so they learned from their mistakes in game number 1. They well, not for the Esmeralda, but mainly for the Minotaur, right? They know that they want to try to react to this dive. It already seems like Egypt are looking to go for a dive composition, so going for something like a Minotaur is great. But now that you show the Esmeralda and the Minotaur, two very, very tanky members, the carry finds its way into the game, but this time for Egypt, not Tunisia, as we enter the second phase of the bans. And I think now would be a good opportunity, would be a good time as well to just go for the Clint ban, because I think the Clint will still have a lot of value here. Going up against this kind of composition, your Kiteaway is still great despite having a Guardian's Bulwark with the Lolita, but it seems they're more concerned about the Claude, so more concerned about someone that has mobility that will be very easy to use up against a Lolita. Mobility is key when you go up against a dive comp, when you go up against a composition with this kind of CC, right? You need to land those abilities, so I get the Claude ban, and they ban out the Valentina here, so just a little bit late on that call. Not the first phase, but comes through in the second phase.
Okay. Interesting, too, because maybe they're just saying, too, that they're comfortable going against that matchup, because it looks like they go with the Ixia ban. So maybe they're like, you know what, we will go with this carry this time around, and you guys, Tunisia, you can pick up the Clint and battle it out in the gold lane, because you talked about the matchup alone that, carry doesn't have that advantage, right, in the gold lane against the Clint. But this time around, because I want to know just how good this Lolita pick is going to be, because we've seen it banned out, we've seen it targeted banned out, so obviously there's information there for Nucci. And if I'm thinking about it too, the Lolita is actually going to be pretty good paired up with the carry. You can actually set some great things up. Now this is even better because you get a Novaria that can provide some vision for you to work around with and set things up, because think about it, like Novaria alone is a spotter not just for Lolita, but also a Yuzong. Like, this allows you to not have to force that early Black Dragon. You can get the vision that you need and then set up from there. Because again, what they want to counterplay is the Minuian Fury and the setups now that this Ruby is possibly going to get locked in. Not sure 100% yet if it is. But if that's the case, there's a whole lot of CC potential from Tunisia as well. Setup potential even.
Enough for the last pick, right? They're already hovering over the Ruby, so trying to really punish the low range that the composition has. Aside from the Novaria, obviously, but the carry, the Yuzong, the Lolita can all be punished by the Ruby because of their range, melee as well. They go for the Exborg instead. They want to try to read out that final pick, because I was also expecting something like a Baxia or Barat as a last pick for Egypt, right? So I think it's a great read, and it's a great adjustment as well, because maybe they did have that in plan, but now that they see an Exborg, they decide to go for even more damage. And yeah, we get to see the Clint as well.
Jungle Esme?
Matchup. It's a jungle Esme, yeah.
Okay.
It's a jungle Esme. Not too sure this game though, right? Because there's technically not a lot of shielding from Egypt.
Yeah.
The Lolita, I guess, and when she goes for Flask of the Oasis, I guess that she will be able to give the whole team a shield, but yeah, not
They usually rush it,
easy.
right? Lolita's
Yeah.
rush flask, no?
Exactly, yeah. Now they rush flash. So I maybe that's the idea. Maybe they picked up the Esmeralda because they know that it's gonna be a Lolita with a flask rush, so that the whole team will get shielding and Esmeralda will get the added value. But this time it's kind of the opposite, right? The early game control should be on the side of Tunisia based on their pick, based on the
Yeah.
diversions that they can create as well, to rotate around the map and to give the Clint even maybe a different angle to attack or a different way to play the game. He can just rotate over in the first turtle and then get diversion back into his own lane. A lot of creative maneuvers that definitely could come to fruition here in game number 2 for Tunisia. And still, even despite Egypt winning that game 1 in a very dominant way, with this draft, there's a solid chance that we get our first full best of 3, Naisu.
What I'm saying, man, I like both drafts from the first game to this game. I think the things that needed to be changed and improved on, Tunisia did here. So let's go ahead and jump into this game. Again, it's game number 2 here between Tunisia and Egypt right now, match point. And remember what's at stake here. Either of these teams that does win the series will be locking in that first slot available to go on to the AEC in Casablanca.
Okay. Game number 2, when we still don't see any signs of the new emblems, Naisu. I would love to see the new emblems, you know, to really talk about it.
Where are they?
Yeah, the war cry. Then what's the other ones? What was the other
I
one
remember
called?
it's like, it looks like a Rubik's Cube, right? Like
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, but yeah, we're not gonna get to see it, not here at least right now. Before Nucci, Concussive Blast, it's still the QC start, and interestingly enough, earlier Raven really wants to take control of this lane because I think she knows that this is a very, very good lane for her up against a carry, right? You're very long range, you have an explosive amount of damage in the early game. So she actually went for first item dagger to try to amplify that early game prowess. But wow, wait, Names is actually doing a good job in this lane, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll get poked down. You'll obviously still lose out of the trade eventually, but the fact that she was able to get in that much damage was already very impressive. But also, the mid lane, Electa, setting up for a possible pick-off here. And she does clear way faster compared to the Esmeralda, but the Esmeralda is this like surprisingly very, very quick to clear as well. So he's got to be careful.
yeah, also in the mid lane, it looks like I was wondering when Electa, when she would actually pull the trigger on that, and it looked like she got the flicker out from
Ooh.
Mary. So was he able to get that Raven getting knocked down here a little bit as well? Turtle's going to be up though in just a few seconds, so you're going to see both teams trying to get that level 4 available and maneuver around the map. But Electa also still bottom side, wants to find Raven. Not sure if she's going to get the opportunity, but it looks like Nucci's there as well, and they're going to walk into the bush. This could be devastating for Dusk. Jumps in, Electa won't be able to get killed though, but I think they're going to be happy with that. They might try to rotate up unless still they stay on this bottom side, putting pressure on Raven. So all the information was there. Mary still has the diversion as well, but she has to be careful because she doesn't have a flicker. And at this point, Nucci still waiting for that level 4. They're going to push the go signal, Tunisia, on this turtle. Neither team wants to fight it out, though. It looks like Tunisia will just go ahead and grab the first objective. Turtle secured.
I think it's a good decision though from Egypt, right? I mean, obviously Tunisia are the ones to get the advantage, which is well played to them. But for Egypt, they know that they're going to lose out significantly when it comes down to power around the neutral objective control. Tunisia have much more AoE, and Electa will need to play around to try to flank. And they take it.
Oh, right there. They're going to actually press the situation. Minoy and Fury going to go in. Mary gets the kill. Electa not able to find Raven. She is completely fine. So it's Nucci that goes down in the exchange, and she even flickered too. So this time around, Tunisia starts off on a strong foot in the early game.
For sure. The early game control definitely in favor of Tunisia, neutral objective wise as well, because of the Minotaur and more sustainable lineup technically, with even more base damage in the early game on that Loyi, right, and the Esmeralda. So yeah, I would say it's still a good move by Egypt, the fact that they did not go for the first turtle, but Tunisia again showed off as to why this composition is so diverse, because even if Egypt go for the cross map plays constantly, Tunisia will have a way to actually match that. They have a diversion, and it was very surprising that they took that, because I think they already saw that Nucci was prepared in that bush. So yeah, definitely caught Egypt off guard as well there. And so far, a very good lead at the start. It's only 400 though, so it's not too crazy. And if you take a look at the items, Heptases already completed for Raven. Straight up, not even going for the warrior boots. And that's the complete opposite from Names, who goes in for a more defensive build. And it seems up top, it's the same. Warrior boots getting prioritized for the most part. Only two tough boots we're seeing from the side of Egypt on the jungle and also on the roam. Trying to get out of the CC as much as possible with those tenacity attributes that you get from the boots. And the diversion, this is the thing about the low E, right? What makes it so prio is, yeah, you can obviously take the diversions. You can obviously go for the flanks and maneuver in crazy ways with the diversions, but you can also just use it as a way to open up the map. And now that they know that Nucci was there, that she's opposition, looks like they want to just go for this neutral objective, and they also have the winning lane in the gold lane. So all the advantages for Tunisia for Turtle 2.
Really quickly, they're going to work on this Turtle, but they have the Echo, they have the information down. Dragon Form going to be used. Electa, she goes in, she's able to get it. Minoan Fury going to be used though from Yuki. Can they win the fight? Dusk is going to be the one to fall. So now Egypt steps on the gas in the early portion of the game. They'll get the Turtle, they'll get the kills. Can they get out with their lives still? It looks like Tunisia wanted to fight it for a little bit longer, but they take the back seat, they back off. So Egypt, I'm surprised that Electa was even able to just have enough information to go in there, but that's what we were talking about in the draft, Mirko. The fact that you have a Novaria to provide that information with the Echo is what works so well with the lineup that they have.
And I think it's also the faster rotation coming in from the Yuzong. Velvet was able to rotate much faster than the X-Borg. Because for the X-Borg, oh wait, another skirmish!
Oh, Yuki gets the heal. Motivational roller, not gonna be enough to heal up from that damage. So right now, Egypt, we've seen them do this before, and they get this lead and they roll with it. Can Tunisia kind of settle in and get back into this game right now? They're gonna lose the turret though in the tier 1.
Great maneuvers by Egypt. I was about to say, right? I mean, the fact that Velvet was able to rotate faster on the X-Borg, you want to be in the fight before it even starts, because that's where you find the most value out of the X-Borg, when you're able to poke, get the stacks all the way to full before the team fight even starts. So by the time the team fight starts, you just pop in the Last Insanity as a way to initiate. And technically for the opposing team, if you know you were successful in your endeavors of getting the full stacks of the fire on the enemy team, they're kind of already forced away. They're already zoned away automatically. But because Velvet got there faster, yeah, for sure. When it comes to instant impact, Yuzong definitely has the upper edge. You get the Petrify down, you get that Furious Dive as well, and that's what was able to be used up by Egypt to go and get Dusk in a tough spot to Retri. And that's why Electa was just able to walk up Retri and use the base damage within her kit to go for it. And now they're gonna go for another, and it seems now Tunisia, they're on the back foot despite having the neutral objective control setup that they had in their composition. It's a free turtle over to Egypt, and they're gonna go for bottom lane. It's a mirror play, but I think Egypt can get a turret as well in the bot.
Objective trades happening right now. They get that turtle. Last Insanity gonna be used to try to clear that wave out. And also Mary making her way down with the diversion now in the mid lane, trying to keep things together. Echo gonna be dropped. Names makes it now. She wants to fight. Numenon Blast gonna be used right in the mid lane. Yuki already using the Minoan Fury, and meanwhile in the bottom lane too, Mary is low. So Egypt just forcing Tunisia back on both fronts, the mid and the bottom lane. What turrets will they work on? They're gonna make their way now on the bottom side. Look at the shielding with Nucci here, especially now that she has the photo, she has that flask of the Oasis available. It looks like still they'll go ahead and cut this lane in and go for the turret. Look at the damage once again. Dusk not expecting it as Electa goes in, bursts down with a fracture.
She just got deleted, assassinated, and it was a combo together. Electa plus Names. Electa with the initial burst, but then that consistent damage coming in from Names as well, just melting down the HP bar. And as we expected, Flask of the Oasis first item, Nucci goes in very, very aggressively. Option Bulwark as well is playing it safe. But right after going for the photo, she goes straight to the steel leg plate. So it's a different build to what we've seen actually, I think in the first day of the African regional qualifiers. Do you remember that? The Flask of the Oasis right into the Blood Wings was what we saw. And yeah, this is definitely the more defensive build, the safer build compared to the Blood Wings. Maybe when you're ahead, you can still go for that. But for Raven, a good part of, or a good news for Tunisia is the fact that Raven already has the item power specs, Heptases plus the Endless Battle. So if they are able to go for a team fight and if they are able to get the combo down, my god, that's
all she has to do.
damage is ridiculous already. And I guess it makes sense with the items that he has, but I would expect Tunisia to be a bit more tanky than this. In the 9th minute of the game, Electa's doing whatever. She can do whatever she wants in the game, and it doesn't seem like Tunisia can even punish her.
And with that, I think they're just going to go ahead and stomp this Lord, possibly still looking to take this tier 1 in the mid lane down. But Electa, she's going to go ahead and start up the Lord. Rest of the team going to kind of keep up in the front. Velvet goes in. They're going to find Yuki. Yuki has to flicker out, one hit away. And she'll go down right under the turret. And Lord is taken as well. Egypt, once again, finding themselves furthering the control in this game. 10 minutes in. They've made power play after power play so far, getting themselves even a further snowball into the game. As tier 1 turret in the mid lane will now fall, and if it's any time for Raven to shine, she's got to do it now. Because Egypt has done this time and time before, where they get the lead and they don't let go.
Doesn't seem like they want to let go in this game with the Lord as well. They were able to take that tier 1 without the Lord, right? So they're slowly but surely going to build up these waves to crash down on all 3 of the tier 2s. And remember, maybe because it's been normalized to end the game before the 10th minute, we haven't been talking about the value of the First Lord, how it's already good if you get all tier 2s, just tier 2s. But yeah, that's what Egypt can do right now. They can just push their gold lead and amplify it even further. And man, Yui is just landing all these shots onto Mary, onto everyone with the Astral Sphere. So it makes it really hard for Tunisia to even handle the damage output coming in from Egypt, because it's so diverse as well. You got true damage from Names, you got physical damage from Velvet and Electa, and you got that magic damage with the glowing wand and the anti-regen. Remember, the NOD and the glowing wand has kind of merged, and now it's one item. So when you snowball, it'll be even more painful. Look at that!
Oh no, Nucci! He goes in! She gets a huge Numenon blast on multiple members, and a total collapse on Tunisia.
Ooh.
What a setup from Nucci. We were wondering about the Lolita, and that's it right there. What timing, what game sense, and the setup from Egypt.
And now they're going to go and crash down onto the base turrets, but luckily for Tunisia, they still have the turret splashes of the base turrets to save them from the siege. But just as I say that, another wave comes down in the bottom lane, and 3 of them are still down.
Okay, they get the armor down. They're going to work on the turret here. Nucci jumps in once again, holding the front line down. There's the Minoan Fury for the flicker from Yuki. They do want to find it out, but Yuki's going to be the one to fall from Names. It's just too much damage, even for a Minotaur. And so right now, Egypt, happy with the base turret. They might set their eyes on a different lane. They have a massive lead, 10,000 gold ahead here. Tunisia, what can they do to stay in the game and possibly turn it around? Right now, it's looking dire.
It's looking bleak for Tunisia for sure. And I'm thinking of the ways that they can try to utilize the comeback, and it's still also kind of the same position that they're in from game number 1, Naisu. Egypt, they've gotten this 10,000 gold lead mostly on objectives. It's 8-1. It's 8 kills in the 12th minute of the game. The only person with a bounty is Electa. So even if they win a team fight, let's say they get a big team fight, there's only 1 bounty to claim. And if you take a look at the individual differences of the, like, from the gold, man, the carry versus the Clint, that's a 3,000 almost gold lead just from the gold laners, bro. Then we have the XP, also another 2,000 gold lead, and then the jungler, which is ridiculous, also 3,400 with a Melphic Roar, a BOD, a Hunter Strike, and the Heptases. I think anyone who really walks up will just get obliterated by the Nolan alone. We don't even need to add into the fact that that's a War Axe plus Hunter Strike, Yuzong. I think that was the same build from game number 1. They know that they're so far ahead that they can actually get away with more damage instead of more sustainability. And technically, maybe relying on the Flask of the Oasis to keep them healthy. That's a Blood Wings too. Nucci's playing with the shields, bro.
She just got the steel leg plates, and she's like, I'm fine. I'm going to go ahead and get the wings next. And it's working perfectly for them right now. They might possibly end the game. Numen Blast gonna be loaded up. We're not gonna find the connection this time around, but Mary gets in trouble, has to flicker out defensively. Dragon Form and Whole Lot gonna be used. This is good for Tunisia. They got key ultimates down. They get the Lord taken care of, and they still hold on to that top base turret. They've lost the mid and the bottom. Can they keep the defense going here? Biggest thing they can do is continue to buy time, defend successfully in the base. That's what they need to keep doing to stay in the game, to hope to get to a game 3. Egypt right now, once again, looking to cap out the series in a sweep, looking to lock in that first slot to AEC for Northern. And right now, going to press the situation once again. Electa will be the one to go down. Numen Blast going to find multiple targets, but they still can't follow up on a kill just yet. They want to get the turret. They might back off from here. Mary takes a couple of shots, and one as well for Mui. But right now, base fully exposed, and Egypt might call it back from here. They're down Electa. They don't want to force a fight. They are going to poke a little bit from now, but they have some healing for Tunisia with that motivational roar. And it looks like that's going to be it for now. A minute away from this next Lord.
They get the bounty. We were talking about how the bounty could actually give Tunisia a little bit more gold resource to use in the later stage of the game. And technically for Tunisia, this game, compared to last game, they have way better wave clear. Last game, it was a carry that could deal damage to, the Lord. Single target, you're pretty good. But when it comes to these big waves, it's a bit tough for that carry. And now they have the Clint. So technically, they have better wave clear. But I wouldn't say that trade was really worth it, even though Tunisia got the shutdown, because they got the base turret for that kill, Naisu. They got a big base turret, and now that was the base turret that for Tunisia at least they needed to defend, because it was the far lane. They could handle the bottom lane and the mid lane when it comes down to contesting the Lord, but the fact that Egypt were able to crack open the base turret up top.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
Oh, they're gonna collapse down. Dust could be in trouble here. Sandwich play, but has the speed. Echo going to be dropped. Dragon form used. Jumps in. Gets a huge knock up with a furious dive of the petrified combo. And that might just be it. Getting cut off and dismantled in the top lane. Egypt finds 3. And now will push into the base. They don't have the waves just yet. Making their way top and bottom. And now it's a 5 versus 2. What can Tunisia do but just look at the base get destroyed, and Egypt will secure their spot to AEC as they sweep Tunisia.
Another clean performance by Egypt, and it's up against the teams that they were waiting for. This is the team that they said in the interview that they wanted to go up against because Tunisia were good. So Egypt, it seems the doubts from yesterday as well as to how they were able to end the game in 6 minutes. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe it was the enemy team not being on the same level. It seems at this point, no one is on the same level. Not just yet, right? We're going to find out if the teams can actually adapt and adjust and maybe improve to the level that Egypt are playing at right now. But it seems in North Africa, at least, we'll see in AAC if that continues. If maybe some of the southern teams or maybe Morocco, the host, could try to beat Egypt, but right now, Egypt stands on top of the ladder of the food chain, of the food pyramid. Based on their performance is so convincing. Game number 1 was 7-0. Game number 2 was what? 10-1? 10-2? We'll have to see it later on. But let's take a look at game number 1, how they were able to win out and to out macro Tunisia. Because early on, Tunisia were actually able to get the first turtle in game number 1. After that first turtle, though, Egypt made the right adjustments happen. They knew that Tunisia had a lot of layering, had a lot of sustain to play with in these skirmishes. And if Tunisia were able to bait out some of these resources from Egypt and then go for the fight with their big ultimate still intact, with their big ultimate still available, that they would win. So Egypt, they basically slowed down the pace slower than what Tunisia wanted. They slowed it down so much to a point where they were the ones reacting to Tunisia's plays. Tunisia were always the one looking to go for the engages after the second turtle because they were already caught in the spot where it's a bit tough for them to come back, right? With this composition, they want a team fight, but Egypt knew that. Egypt knew that real good because every single time they would wait for that team fight proactivity from Tunisia to happen, that initiation to happen, and then they would react with a stolen Nether Realm, with the Black Dragon form, with the hard guard constantly on these frontliners, and most importantly, with names on the Clint who snowballed so well in the early game up against the carry and got to a point where she started to just obliterate the frontliners. So the front to back composition that that Tunisia wanted to utilize couldn't even work. Egypt did it a bit better. And in game number 2, we saw the adjustment from Tunisia. We saw the improvement for sure. It wasn't like they made the same mistakes. It was completely different already. It's a completely different game, completely different draft. And for the early game, again, Tunisia were able to play very, very well, utilizing the diversion in a very creative way and securing the first neutral objective. But when we came into the second neutral objective, again, Egypt it almost kind of feels like for Egypt, they're always downloading resources from their opponents, right? The first turtle phase, like the first 2 minutes of the game, is the downloading process of Egypt. Once they have it downloaded, it's usually the second turtle, and then they know exactly how to play against that composition. The adjustment period is necessary for Egypt, and technically, maybe in the future, some other African teams could try to expose that in the early game. But for now, Egypt are just too good at adapting and adjusting to the enemy team. After the first hurdle, it was just completely different in execution as well, because on paper, Egypt's composition was not built to actually win out against Tunisia's comp in a pure neutral objective battle. Tunisia have so much CC, they have so much poke, they have so much damage output, and on top of that, they have so much creativity. But it seems like all that, everything that I mentioned for Tunisia, it was all on the side of Egypt. They had more damage, they had more creative ways, and I think we really just have to give it over to the execution of these ladies on Team Egypt, right? Because they played it so well. They used the composition that looks very one-dimensional, looks to be a very front-to-backy composition, aside from the Nolan and the Yuzong. That's a little bit more dive, but they played it in such a unique way. They had all these angles to attack differently from, and I think the Astral Echo as well really kind of stopped them to do anything at every single point. I think in the final engage too, we'll get to see it later on, but if it wasn't for the Astral Echo multiplying the hitbox of Tunisia's members, then this Furious Dive would not actually land. Look at this. Like, Furious Dive goes in. They were already out of the Furious Dive, but because of the hitboxes being enlarged by that Astral Echo, that little bit of utility that you really don't expect. Even, like, the men's team struggle with calculating how much exactly that hitbox actually enlarges after the Astral Echo, right? But they got caught off guard. They tried to go for the cross-map play. They thought Egypt wanted to go for the Lord, but I guess it just goes to show how adaptable and how adjustable Egypt are, because they completely improv that last initiation. They were like, all right, if you want to go up top, we don't need the Lord. We can just go for the fight, take you on, and then win out in the team fight and end the game right there. That's what they did.
It's like when you watch the highlights there, something we don't have here for the IESF on